Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Strong Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell. And today I have with me one of my favorite people on the planet, Dr. Mark Goulston. Mark, welcome to my show.
Well, I always enjoy spending time with you, Meredith. So let's rock and roll.
Let's do. I want to share with my audience that I first learned about you after I had read your book, which is one of my favorites, Just Listen. I was so tickled to meet the author in person and then just get to know Mark because he's just such a remarkable human being. And when I started my podcast back in 2019, Mark was one of the first people I invited to be a guest. And this is his third appearance on my show, but it's been too long since we've had this conversation. What's interesting today is that this is going to be somewhat different. The topic is very important to every one of my listeners because it's relevant to all of our lives. Mark has been dealing with a special, serious health issue, and it awakened him. Interestingly, his podcast is called My Wakeup Call. And Mark, as I was thinking about that, I thought this health issue that you have has been a wake-up call for you. And one of the things that it has brought out in Mark is the realization that there were a lot of things that he had to share with people. And he started a YouTube channel called I'm Dying to Tell You. And so, Mark, what I want to do today is explore with you a little bit about your illness, whatever you would want to share of that, and then some of the messages that you've been recording, because every single one of them is so pertinent and valuable to all of us. So tell us a little bit about what's been going on.
Well, about 2.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with lymphoma, but it was one of these slow-growing illnesses. And my oncologist said, well, we can treat you or we'll just watch it. And then when you get ill, which you will, the treatments are all great. And we'll start a treatment and that should be very helpful. So we just watched it for a while and everything looked okay, except I had this pesky anemia that wouldn't go away. And then what happened is, we tried all kinds of treatments and it still wouldn't go away. And then we did a bone marrow biopsy. So that reveals certain blood elements that don't come out in blood tests. And one of the elements that it revealed was something called monoblasts. And mine were about 9%. And it also revealed I had a condition called high-risk myelodysplastic syndrome, meaning some of my blood elements were dysplastic. They just weren't right. And myelodysplastic syndrome, high risk, leads to acute myeloid leukemia. So I had about 9% of these monoblasts. If it gets up to 20%, you're into leukemia. And normal is 5% or under. So at that point, my oncologist, who was more oncologist than hematologist, referred me to a hematologist. And to make a long story short, the treatments for what I have are a combination of chemotherapy, and the definitive treatment is something called a bone marrow transplant. And a bone marrow transplant is an organ transplant. I mean, just like a heart transplant, where you go in and they kill off all your bone marrow cells by full body radiation. And then you find a donor who matches you, and you get stem cells from that donor. So my donor happens to be my son. he'll go in and have a procedure that's a little bit like dialysis, and they'll remove stem cells, beginning cells, out of his blood, and they'll, recirculate his blood back to him. And then in about a month's time, I'll be going into the hospital for a bone marrow transplant, in which, as I mentioned, they kill off all my marrow, and then they inject the stem cells that they will have gotten from my son. And I start from zero. I'm going to, if it all takes, I'm going to have to get all my childhood vaccines again, mumps, measles, chickenpox. I mean, you're just starting all over. Mm. And I was a little bit negative about the prognosis about 6 months ago, but I was reading old numbers, and the old numbers were 20% mortality in which you die during the procedure by getting an infection that's just not treatable, and about a 48% 3-year survival for my age. I'm in my mid-70s, and but my hematologist said, well, things have progressed, and the mortality is still about 10 to 15% during it, and the survival rate, though, is up to about 75%. And if it works, it's basically a cure, because they take out all your bone marrow and replace it with fresh 34-year-old stem cells. Mm-hmm. And I've been chomping at the bit to just get this show on the road. And I've been learning some amazing things, which I share, and I'm dying to tell you the videos. One of them is the importance of an amazing team in life. And that can be not just in business, but that can be your spouse and maybe your friends. And I learned that because I have a hematologist, a Dr. Ron Paquette at Cedars. He has 262 5-star patient reviews. He's a unicorn amongst unicorns, and I can understand why. So I feel total trust and confidence in him, even though I've been doing some research. And so I can just turn it over to him. And whatever he suggests, I follow. And I had seen another doctor before him who was very bright, but quite arrogant. And I can tell you that I wouldn't have had much of my peace of mind if I went with that person, because I'd be afraid to ask him questions. I'd be afraid to text them, what does this mean? Because he wasn't that responsive. So that's one of the videos is have a great team, and that especially means your spouse or your partner and your business partners. People that you can totally rely on and totally trust. And then, of course, you need to be that person too.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mark, I forgot to mention up front, you are an expert, a specialist who has worked with death and dying patients for many years. And so this diagnosis kind of hit home for you, I think, and caused you to realize there's a lot you have to say. And I was looking, I've watched a number of them. You have over 40 now. And one of the ones that I was so struck by was the very first one that you did about Michelangelo dying. And you were making this distinction about discovering what's important and what's not important. And I think that, it would be really useful for my listeners to understand your perspective on what caused you to start thinking about that even more. And some of the stories you told in that one video were very powerful. Could you talk to that? How do you make that determination?
Well, I called it Michelangelo dying because there's a quote attributed to him where he said, I saw the angel in the marble and then I carved to set it free. And what happened is I saw what's important in life surrounded by what's not important. And I just carved away what wasn't important. And when I just carved away what wasn't important, what was important just shined through. And one of the discoveries I discovered was your relationships. And so it's very important to me that the people I love not just know I love them, but they feel loved by me. And a lot of times, in a lot of families, a lot of people are emotionally shy. They don't know how to emotionally connect. So you can say, oh, I know my parents love me and I love them. But it doesn't mean you know each other. Well, you know that each of you likes certain things and dislikes certain things. But to really know each other emotionally is fairly rare. And it's very rare between dads and their families, because a lot of dads show caring by giving advice, solving problems. And they don't know how to get close emotionally, not because they don't want to, but they don't know how to. And I see it as a tragedy. A lot of people have been approaching me with stories where, and these would be males, where they stop their very busy lives and empire building to go be with their dad who was dying. And they just stayed in the hospital for 2 days or hospice and held his hand. And if he was conscious, he let down his guard. And every one of these people, again, mostly men, because women seem to be able to emotionally connect. Every one of these men said, it was probably the most powerful moment of my life. It strikes me as kind of sad and tragic, because why do we have to wait until someone's dying to, just lower our guard and demonstrate our love to them emotionally? And so that's one of the things another message I'm giving to the world is that try to emotionally connect with the people you love. And when they want to connect with you, let it in. One of the problems I've always had is I'm a caretaker. I'm a doctor. I care about you, but no, you don't have to care about me. I'm just doing my job. And so I've always had trouble letting anyone care about me emotionally. And what's interesting is a number of people have come out of the woodwork caring about me, and I'm letting it in. And
How does it feel? How does that feel to let it in?
I'll share something, and I might get emotional with you. One of the episodes is the power of true vulnerability. And by vulnerability, we mean openness. Because a lot of people think vulnerable, someone's going to hurt you. I wouldn't be vulnerable. No, vulnerable I meant is open. And I can remember, I don't know, about 5 months ago, someone I have a good relationship, would call and say, how are you doing? And they'd want something. So I'd say, I'm fine. What are you working on? What can I help you with? What are you trying to make happen? And I live to serve. I mean, it's just who I am. It probably goes back to my doctor, therapist roots. And on this occasion, he said, well, how are you, Mark? And obviously he had an agenda for calling. But we kind of had a relationship. And I said, I've got a few issues. And he said, well, like what? And then I looked into the camera and I said, I might be dying. And I just looked into the camera. And I got emotional. I can feel it coming to the surface even now. And I got embarrassed. I apologized. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. No, I'm good. What are you working on? And here's some interesting responses, mostly from men, because women do have built in them a way of connecting to their children, a way of connecting to their spouses if their spouses allow it. And one of the responses, first of all, they've all said, don't apologize. And I said, well, I'm embarrassed. I'm getting emotional here. And one of the men said, this is not a burden, Mark, it's a gift. And I said, what? He said, it's a gift, how you're being, what you're doing. And I said, I don't get that. He said, this is the most emotionally intimate conversation I've ever had. Wow. And then another man said, no, don't apologize. I envy you. What? No, you can have your illness. I don't want your illness. He said, I want your openness. You may see yourself as being a little bit emotional. I see you as being open and free, and I've never been able to do that. And then I've started my version of the 700 Club. The 700 Club is a club for recovering alcoholics and substance abuse people. And nearly everybody, including my good friend Meredith, have said to me, 24/7, Mark. And I said, what is that? But they said, you can call me 24/7. And I will tell you, these are very busy people. And if I came to them with one of my cockamamie business ideas, they say, well, Mark, that sounds kind of interesting, but I'm kind of busy and, I wish you luck. But they were the ones saying 24/7. And I've been trying to figure out, why would very busy people who would never take my call spontaneously offer 24/7? And what I realize is, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, is they say 24/7, not for just caring about me. They want more real conversations. It's so rare that they want more of them. So instead of my feeling like a burden, no, I don't want to be a 24/7 burden. What I realize is having these honest and real conversations are rare, and people hunger for them, but they just don't know how to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. I think you're on track there. And also, you're a lovable person, and people care deeply about you as they get to know you. And so it's natural to say, I want to be available to help support you. It probably seems odd or different to you because you're usually the one making that offer, being available, helping people. As I've been listening to you, I just realize how right you are about how rare it is for people to be able to connect at a meaningful level. And I'm curious if you have some suggestions about what's one thing somebody could do to help open a conversation, to allow this kind of conversation to happen. So it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to make something happen. If people aren't even aware of what could facilitate or precipitate that kind of conversation, what would you say?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on your intention. You can have a superficial intention, where you're basically transactional, and we're taught, we're trained, if you want to have more real conversations, to ask certain questions. Well, how are things in your family? Are you taking vacations? What do you like about your job? But if if you don't really care about the answers because your ulterior motive is to break the ice with those, it'll come off as disingenuous. I remember in my book, Just Listen, there was an anecdote where I belonged to some networking organization. And in between the monthly meetings, you would go have a lunch or a breakfast with 2 or 3 other members. I remember I went to a breakfast with a couple of the members. You know, they were both sort of 30-something, a 30-something man, a 30-something woman. And at that time, I was probably a late 50-something. And I remember the man, decent person, salesperson of some kind. And he was asking the woman various things like, well, where did you go to school? And, what did you like about it? And some of them were great questions. I took note of them. I thought, these are great questions. And then I took them aside afterwards. And I developed this reputation where they'd say, go have lunch with Mark. Yeah, but he's a psychiatrist. What can he do? This is a business network. They just say, go have lunch with Mark. Because I would drill down into people with an effort to make them better, make them more effective. I mean, that's my purpose, is not to drill down, just to, show that I can drill down. So I took them aside afterwards and I said, I occasionally interact with billionaires, and I would imagine that's what you want to work your way up to. And if I was a billionaire interacting with you and you asked those questions, I would smile to myself, I can probably name the sales training course that he took. And I said, if you're going to ask those kind of questions, care about the answer. So a lot of it's your intention.
Mm-hmm.
So part of what I'm wanting to share in the world is to help the world feel closer. There's someone that looks like we coach each other, and he's wonderful. And he talks about, the caring leader. And I told him, after he interviewed me, I said, I think the world of you, but just when you're about to lean into the caring, you go up into your head and you say something instructive, intellectual. And if your brand is about the caring leader, you might want to change that. And I said, one of the great things about you is you don't talk over and at people, which is good. But you almost purely talk to people, and you're missing out talking with people. And given what your brand is, you might want to cultivate talking with people, because when you talk to people instead of with them, especially people in your family, it doesn't help when people feel lonely. And I said, I want you to try this out with your family, especially your spouse. Because this is one of my other, I have a video called Doing an Over at To with Audit. And what that means is, instead of speaking over and at people, you want to speak to and with them. And you should do an audit. You go out to people in your family, stakeholders, and say, I heard something that we should make an effort to talk to business as usual. With is connecting instead of over and at. And this person said, I need to toggle between to and with and away from over and at. What do I do? How do you see me? And this guy, he's just wonderful. I think he's emotionally shy, as most men are. And that's one of the reasons they don't talk with people, because most men are emotionally shy because they don't feel particularly competent to do it. So I just got a message. He said, when can we schedule our next meeting? I did your homework assignment. And I proposed the book for him. I said, you have all the money in the world. I think this is the book you should do, and it'll be a game changer for you. So he's all excited about that. And separately, you and I are going to talk, because one of the things I like to do is step into the essence of people, and have that essence be their persona. And I'll tell your listeners, and I mean this as a compliment. I shared with Meredith that she reminds me of Mr. Rogers.
I took the compliment.
I thought the world of Mr. Rogers, because he overflowed with earnestness and kindness. And Meredith, you do too. And yes, you bring a lot of knowledge, you bring a lot of competence, but I think you're overflowing with being earnest, decent, and kind. That's your super sauce.
Thank you. I want to circle back to the with, and thinking about somebody. Let's say you gave this assignment to all of my listeners. Focus more on talking with people instead of at, over, or even to them. What does that look like in practice? What is somebody doing differently? Getting away from it being transactional, but who are they being? What does the other person perceive if I'm being with them?
Well, they perceive that you actually care about them. So one thing I see in the medical profession and healthcare professionals that contributes to their burnout, and that's my latest episode. I think I have a solution to burnout. That many people, especially nurses, went into the profession because they care about people. But in an effort to make sure they've checked all the boxes, they've checked all the routines, many times they provide care, but their caring doesn't have a chance to come out because they're too busy. And many went into the profession because they are caring individuals. And there's a difference between providing care and caring. So here's a tip that many of your listeners will find daunting, especially your male listeners, especially entrepreneurs. In fact, if they've listened this far and they hear this, they're going to chuckle and they'll say, that takes more courage than I have, Mark. And what it is if you're kind of a alpha, and you can be an alpha woman or an alpha male. An alpha means pedal to the metal. You stay focused, you accomplish a lot. And then once you accomplish something, you go on and accomplish more. But you don't necessarily connect with people. Nearly all the CEOs of technology are alphas and a little bit on the spectrum, but they don't connect emotionally with people. What they connect with, by the way, is they connect with people's desire for excitement and adrenaline rushes. And so they hook them on that. Because if you're driven by adrenaline rushes and excitement, it's very fleeting and you have to keep feeding the monster. Mm-hmm. And you can sell a lot of stuff to keep that stuff alive. But getting back to you entrepreneur males, what you do is you take your partner aside. And you can, and if you're someone who's too much of this, even in your business, to your business partner, to your co-founder, your COO, or your HR director. I feel HR directors, they're always between a rock and a hard place. And what you say is, have I ever been so busy that I couldn't give you my undivided attention about something that was really, really important to you?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to go, what? Yeah. Have I ever come off as too busy and too preoccupied to listen to you with my undivided attention when you needed me to listen to you? And unless your spouse has crossed over to being angry at you for that, they're going to be awkward. They're going to say, well, you're a good person. You're always busy. Well, and I understand it. And look, we have a good life. Well, what's happening is they're justifying their hurt and loneliness, to themselves. When in reality, if you have a relationship, it means you need to relate. And you say to them, oh, well, I appreciate all those things, and I'm glad you see it that way, but have I ever made you feel that I was too busy and maybe that you weren't even worth listening to with my undivided attention? And then hopefully you get them to say, yes. Then you say, at my worst, how much did that frustrate and hurt you? Well, you're a good man. No, stop with the good man already. At my worst, how much has that hurt you and maybe caused you to feel lonely? And what you want to do is help them to bring this up and out what they're stuffing down. And they'll say, yeah, that's happened. Then the next thing is, take me to the last time I did it, which I'm sure I won't even remember. And then when they bring up a time when they wanted to tell you about something and you just didn't listen, maybe tell you something about that was really important with one of your children and then it ended up in some crisis. You may not even remember it because you were too busy, but you look at them and you look at them with the eyes that you looked at them when you fell in love with them. And you think to yourself, what have I done to the person I used to adore? And they will not be looking at you because they'll be looking down and crying with relief.
Hmm.
And then you say, look up at me. Oh, come on, look up at me. And then you look into their eyes, own up inside yourself to the pain you've caused in them. You may start to tear up because that's not who you are, but that's how you act. And you say, I did that. I did that a lot. I do that a lot. You deserve better than that. I'm going to fix it. And I'm sorry. So could you track with that, Meredith?
Absolutely. It's profound. I was thinking, Mark, a person doesn't have to be necessarily a driven entrepreneur to fall into that trap, because we can all get busy with different things. A mother sometimes can be so focused on their kids and work and everything else that she might not give the attention to her husband. So there are all kinds of situations where I could see that applying that could have such a healing power if one person, and even in work situations, if there's a boss that's realized that he or she has acted that way with people who work on their team, to be able to go to them and ask that question in whatever form makes sense for that particular relationship. But times when I've been so busy, I didn't listen to what you were saying, that the power of that is so profound in terms of the person feeling like they're being seen, possibly for the first time in a long time.
Now, I'll share something that you and I can relate to historically, but younger listeners won't know what I'm talking about. I write articles for Newsweek. I'm one of the founding members of the Newsweek Expert Forum, and I put out a lot of ideas that, if you read them, you could build programs around them, but they're edgy ideas. And one of my columns was the 7-year itch 2.0. And younger people won't know that, but in the 1950s, there was a play and there was a famous movie, The 7-Year Itch, in which Marilyn Monroe was in Manhattan, and her dress got blown up, and they made a huge statue when the movie came out. I mean, it's an iconic picture, photograph. But the 7-Year Itch basically said that marriages, when they're in their 7 years, frequently spouses, frequently males, are tempted to wander. And I wrote this article because I see it being epidemic in the relationships of millennials. And what I see is that, pedal to the metal mothers and fathers are just busy, 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 and then they have a child. And what happened is that infant is all consuming. And for instance, I thought my daughters were workaholics, but the adoration that they feel towards their children is just uplifting to me. But the danger is that when you have a young infant and they're not sleeping and they're not eating, you're frustrated. You feel like yelling at them. You feel like swearing at them. Get to sleep already. Finish the bottle. But you can't do that because you'll be a bad mother. So, and you don't want to admit it to yourself. So what happens is hubby comes home like Bambi coming in from the forest. And no matter what hubby does, you jump on him. And the reason you jump on him is because you want to displace the anger you're feeling towards your infant child, which makes you feel like you're a bad mother. And so I'm just seeing this as epidemic because I go to the T-balls and I see, the overwhelmed working mom, snapping at the husband. The husband's, and the universal thing is like, hey. Yeah. And here's the dilemma. I hope I'm wrong, but I think there's going to be a lot of divorces. There already are, because what happens is when a hardworking husband, dad comes home and he's tired and he gets jumped on because his wife, mother of their child, jumps on him rather than yelling at their children, he feels that whatever he does is wrong. And then when he's at work or he's on a trip and there is that associate, there is that client, there is that woman who looks at him with these adoring eyes like, you're so amazing. The contrast between being in the world and someone saying, you're so amazing, and you coming home and someone saying, really? You forgot to pick up toilet paper when I told you we're out of it? Really? And so I think there's an epidemic. So please take heed if this is happening to you. And again, I like to give tactics. Here's something that Meredith will say. That's another profound one, Mark. The more proactive you can be in any relationship, the more positive it is. And the more reactive you are, the more destructive it is. So given the fact that disagreements and conflicts always occur in business and in marriage, even with your children, and then when they occur and you get upset and you get reactive, you make it worse. So the proactive thing is, if you're in a marriage, for instance, once a month, if it's tense, maybe once a week you have a dinner And what you say to each other is, when we first met, I used to look forward to seeing you. I couldn't wait to see you. And now I don't. And so what you bring up is anything that gets in the way of your looking forward to see the other person.
Mm.
And you're not, and there have to be some ground rules. You don't get defensive. It's like, and the reason, like a not uncommon thing when a woman brings up to the man in her life is, one of the reasons I don't look forward to seeing you is I'll bring up something that's important, not just to me, to us, and you blow me off. You say, yeah, I'll get around to it. And you never get around to it. It'd be better for you to just be honest and say, I'm not going to do it. And then we'll have to figure another way. But you say, oh, I'll get around to it. And the man might say, what makes me not look forward to seeing you is I always get lectured about something that I forgot or something I did wrong. And so by being proactive, knowing that these things come up, you bring them up. The rules are you don't get defensive because you're clearing the air.
Mm-hmm.
And then you each come up with something to apologize to the other person for. So you have to be aware. I mean, there's some men that just aren't aware. Well, I'm too busy to apologize for anything. Well, does that mean you didn't do anything wrong? No, I just can't remember what they are because I've been too busy. And then you get that up and out. And then by that time, you look in each other's eyes and you say, let me tell you why I'm glad we're together.
Mm.
And you do that proactively.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something. You have a big organization. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on culture change. I have an article up on Newsweek, 3 steps to culture change on a dime. Here's something you can do immediately. Your HR department would love it. And you reach out to your company and you say, I want everybody to wake up in the morning and think, I can't wait to go to work. Now, you have to put aside personal things. I mean, you're getting divorced or you have some personal, mental challenge, that might get in the way. But if you push all that stuff aside and you just think about work in our company, if all of you wake up and say, I can't wait to go to work, we have a good culture. But if a big part of you wake up and say, got another day at that crummy job, maybe I got to put up, redo my resume, we got a problem. So as the CEO, what I want you to all do, and we're going to do this anonymously, is going forward, what observable changes do we need to make that are consistent that would cause you to say, can't wait to go to work?
Mm.
What positive things and what negative things do we need to stop? And we're going to collect them. It's anonymous. Don't finger point at particular individuals. We have other ways to do that. But if it's anonymous, we'll just throw it out. And then we're going to get back to you and say, hey, the most common positive thing that you said we need to do are these. The most common 3 things are these. And we're going to do that. And the most common negative things you told us we needed to stop are these. And we're going to stop those. And every quarter, we're going to check in to see how you think we're doing on a scale of 1 to 10. And then we're going to revise it, or you might want to add things. And because I want us to have a company where everyone says, I can't wait to go to work. And I'm not just doing it to be a nice person. You're going to attract the best talent for us because you're going to go out, you're going to be with your friends, and they're going to say, tell me about your job. And you're going to say, I can't wait to go to work. If they don't feel that way, about their company, they're going to say to you, are you hiring? So I know I give long answers. I apologize, but I got a lot to share. I'm not in the best of health, Meredith.
But Mark, you don't need to apologize.
And I wasn't even crying.
I'll tell you, this is why I love all of our conversations, because you just kind of flow with this wisdom that there's always so many nuggets buried in there. Some of them are rising to the top immediately. What you're saying causes people to have to think about, how am I being now? How is what I'm doing different from what he's advocating? Is there a gap? Because Mark, everything you're saying is so on track, whether it's your, spouse or whether it's someone at work. There's a culture created between two individuals. And I love this real clear image that I got when you were saying those words, I don't look forward to seeing you, versus what do I want to do differently? What do I want differently from you so that I am able to say, I look forward to seeing you, or I get excited about going to work, or whatever it might be. Where are those places in our lives where people don't look forward to seeing us, or we don't even feel comfortable with ourselves because of something that we're doing? I think all the things that you've said just spark reflection. And I think that's what is so beautiful about all these videos that you're creating. Each one of them has a real important point. And you just are so articulate in your ability to express your thoughts, your feelings, wisdom that you bring out. That's such a gift to me and to everybody that gets to hear them. And our conversation today is one of the ways that I want to help get the message out about those videos, because they're so important. And I guess as we wrap up, I would love for you to share anything else you want to about from an individual video or about the video as a set. What is it you hope to do with that and to accomplish with that?
Well, what I'm hoping to accomplish with the videos is I'm much wiser than I am smart. Smart people
say that before.
Smart people make all the money. I don't know how to make money. I focus on making a difference as best I can, and I a lot of people will say, you speak wisdom, Mark. It just, whatever you're saying, it just feels so wise. So I'll just say thank you. Normally I'd be embarrassed, like, well, I'm not wise, blah, 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 blah. But I'll just say thank you. And to me, what wisdom is trying to identify what's important in life, what is enriching in life, what lifts people up, what will be lasting. And so that's what I'm doing with those videos. I hope they'll cause, as you say, people to really reflect on what I'm trying to share. And I come up with these book titles that I'll never do anything with it, but one of them was Healing the World One Conversation at a Time.
Mm.
And I think, when you can talk with people and people feel genuinely cared about, it heals something, not only in them, but in the world. And you were mentioning about who do we look forward to seeing, who don't we? If you talk over and at people, people do not look forward to seeing you, because you're taking away their freedom to choose to engage with you. Because when you talk over and at them, They have to engage with you. And most people resent that. Whereas when you talk to and with people, you give people the space to choose to engage with you or not, to choose to think, do I want more of this conversation or is it over? Do I ever want to see this person again or is that over too?
Oh, what a great summary, really, of everything we've been talking about. And it circles back to, the theme of what you're dying to tell us, and the fact that we all are going to reach that point in our lives that we're at the end. And I think we want to have as few regrets as possible. And from everything I've ever read, it's regrets about relationships that tend to haunt us more than any material things. And so I just love everything that we've woven into this conversation around valuing relationships that you have and taking a hard look at whether you're being a participant that really brings value and helps somebody know that they are valued. We can say so and so is valuable to us, but is our behavior demonstrating that to them? And you've given such wonderful ideas on how we can get real with each other.
So here, I'll end with an exercise because you teed it up without knowing it. It's
Okay.
called the Hoover exercise, HUVA. And I think that's one of the, if you look at one of the videos, I think there's Hoover built into it. And if you want to build your ability to connect with people once a day, if you do this a week, it'll change your life. Once a day, think of a conversation you're going to have in which the other person walks away saying, that was a great conversation. That was one of the best conversations I've ever had. And Hoover stands for heard, understood, valued, and added value. So you have the intention of talking to someone. And I bring this up because you, Meredith, scored 10, 10, 10, 10 on all those. So I have felt heard out by you. You gave me a long leash and I ran with it. I have felt understood by you because it's not like you had a stock question afterwards. You actually elaborated on what I said and actually made it better. So I felt understood. And I feel that you valued what I had to say by every time you said the word profound, I went, ka-ching, that's valued. And the final thing is I feel you added value. You took something I said, you built upon it, you showed not only relevance to the listeners and viewers, but you showed application in other ways than I was talking about. So if you can once a day have a conversation where you leave and you think to yourself, from their point of view, was I Meredith? From their point of view, did they feel heard out? Did they feel I understood them? Did they feel I valued what they had to say? And did they feel that I added value? And don't beat up on yourself if this doesn't come naturally, because it doesn't come naturally. But what I'm telling you, all of you, is if you develop this skill, it can come naturally. And I'm not sure if I did Hoover because you were doing it all the time, and I fully took advantage of it. But if you can practice this, what'll also happen is you're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel like, I actually cared about the other person. I actually cared about them as opposed to what I can get from them. And that can often reduce the embarrassment, guilt, and shame we feel. Do I care about anyone else? Geez, if I don't care about anyone else, maybe I don't deserve to be successful. Maybe I don't deserve to be happy. So see, you're all set to sum it up. You were saying, Mark, let's tie it up. Let's put it into a bow. And that's a dangerous thing to do to me.
Oh, that was a perfect tying up, though, because as you were talking, I was thinking about earlier, I had asked you the question about how can we be with someone, not talking over at or even to them. And this Huva formula is the answer in terms of how we want to show up, how we want to be. And those are, 4 simple words that we can hold in our minds when we get involved in a conversation with someone who matters to us. Whether it's a business prospect or our spouse or one of our kids, but to really see that person and have them experience what it's like to be us when we are in that state. And Mark, yes, you exhibit these all the time. Yes, you were the guest, so you were doing more talking, but you still exhibited all of them. You added such tremendous value to my audience today. And I want to say to my life, you've just been a remarkable friend. So thank you.
My pleasure. By the way, I come up with business ideas and we just came up with one. I'm not going to run with this, but if you're listening in or watching this, you go to the Hoover Vacuum Company and you develop a sales training for them called Hoover. They'll be all over that in a hot minute. And I'm not kidding. I'm not going to do anything with it. And you don't even have to say what you learned. But I don't even know if they exist, though. I think they still make products, Hoover products, but I'm not sure.
We'll close with humor and with an example of your ever creative brain coming up with ideas constantly. Thank you, Mark. I just love who you are. I love you and I appreciate you.
Thank you. And you light up my life, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free Facilitator Guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.